let's go live on Facebook also. The usual logistics. Okay, very good. So now we are going live on IVPN page as well. Perfect. Great. Here we go. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear respected ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good day for all of you from around the world. Thank you for joining us tonight in the first webinar of IVPN Journal Club season number 3. This season that just started today, our mission in IVPN Journal Club is to share the latest published evidence learned from high caliber pharmacotherapy experts in analyzing the primary literature, reading beyond the trial's context, and ultimately optimizing clinical practice and patient care. Tonight, we are a gathering of 200 plus delegates from different countries around the world who came to attend this live session with Dr. Muhammad Fahmy. Dr. Muhammad, popular to all of us, he's a celebrity on LinkedIn under the name of The Good Pharmacist. You know, if you go there and just type the hashtag The Good Pharmacist, you will immediately find tens of articles and tips to help pharmacists around the world to advance their careers and jobs and find jobs. Dr. Muhammad will discuss today with us the evolving role of doxycycline in sexually transmitted diseases prevention that came recently through the article DoxyPEP trial. I wish you all a fruitful webinar. Now I will start by introducing our amazing moderator and cornerstone in IVPN Journal Club from the time it started. IVPN Journal Club listserv. She is Dr. Shahama Al-Juma. Dr. Shahama graduated with a Doctor of Pharmacy degree from Al-Ma'rifa University in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And then during her study, she completed clinical rotations in King Fahd Medical City, King Khalid University Hospital, and King Saud Medical City. After graduation, she worked with infectious diseases team, King Saud Medical City, on infectious diseases protocols. She has interest in research and graphic designing. She is the graphic designer of many IVPN Journal Club flyers. And since December 2020, she joined the IVPN Journal Club listserv as integral part of the IVPN network marketing team and aesthetic committee. She worked as community pharmacist. Then she moved to Dr. Sulaiman Al-Habib Hospital in Riyadh, as she is now working as a pharmacist. Without further ado, Dr. Shahama, we are honored to have you with us as the moderator. Wishing you a great event and a fruitful and beneficial webinar for all of our attendees. The floor and mic and the screen is yours, Dr. Shahama.
Thank you, dear Dr. Ahmed, for your nice introduction. Dear respected colleagues from today and after a while, we are having the new Journal Club webinar with a distinguished speaker in infectious diseases world, Dr. Muhammad Fahmy. Dr. Fahmy graduated from Masr University for Science and Technology in 2018, where he gained his B.Pharm degree. After that, he began working as a hospital pharmacist at Shifa Orman Hospital for Oncology in March 2022. He has gained his postgraduate diploma of clinical pharmacy certificate in 2021. Then he worked as a clinical pharmacist till April 2022, and then as a staff clinical pharmacist at Children's Specialized Hospital from November 2021 till November 2022. Then he have been promoted to work as a supervisor of a clinical pharmacy department from December 2022 till January 2023, when he again promoted to work as a head of clinical pharmacy department from February 2023. In addition, as a learning and development ethicist and continuous education trainer, he used his communication and presentation skills to give lectures sessions to pharmacists, nurses, physicians, and other and non-medical in a various conferences and events. On LinkedIn, he's known as the good pharmacist, as Dr. Ahmed mentioned. So today, our webinar will be talking about the infectious diseases, specifically the role of doxycycline in preventing sexually transmitted diseases. Doxycycline trials. Before starting this webinar, please don't hesitate to ask any questions in the comments, and we will discuss it at the end of the Dr. Fahmi's presentation. Dr. Fahmi, with a great pleasure, we are welcoming you in the IVPN Journal Club and excited to hear from you. Dr. Fahmi, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
I will start sharing my screen so you can see the.
Okay.
Okay. It's ready. Okay. Is it clear?
It's clear for me. Is my voice clear for you?
Okay. Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm Mohammed Fahmi, and this is a lecture of our journal club today entitled Doxycycline for Sexually Transmitted Diseases Prevention. That's journal club will be focused on infectious diseases on the doxypib trial. Next. This is a trial from the New England Journal of Medicine entitled post-exposure of post-exposure of doxycycline. And to start, we will get some refreshment under a background information. Next. Sexually transmitted diseases are acquired through sexual activity. That's a fact. And the second point is Neisseria gonorrhea is a gram-negative diplococci estimated to cause up to 600,000 infections per year in the United States, for example, because of its rapid incubation, about from 1 to 14 days period, and a large number of infected individuals with asymptomatic and again asymptomatic disease. Gonorrhea is difficult to control. That leads to resistance in another slide. The third point is that gonorrhea and chlamydia, they often go together because of high prevalence of coexisting infections unless chlamydia has been ruled out. The fourth point, screening and prevention should be performed for timely diagnosed sexually transmitted infections and prevention of complications, including cervical cancer, infertility, and so on. Sexually partners should be treated concurrently to prevent reinfection. Except for bacterial vaginosis, there is no need for the prevention. Next. The fifth point is gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis all are treated by doxycycline, either as a first line or an alternative treatment. It ends with doxycycline. The sixth point is once the doxycycline considered broad spectrum antibiotic, the relentless advance of bacterial resistance and of patent status on the drugs have reduced the use of tetracycline to a niche indication, small indications, not very wide indications. The seventh point, the mechanism of action for the doxycycline is to bind the bacterial ribosome in the 13th subunit, preventing the blocking of transfer RNA carrying new amino acids for addition to elongating protein chain ends with the bacterial death. Next. This slide will show why doxycycline. Why doxycycline? Because doxycycline is safe, well tolerated, inexpensive, and many countries have doxycycline dosage forms inexpensive. And the second point is the bioavailability is approximately 100%. The third point, doxycycline also used as a prophylaxis in many diseases other than sexually transmitted diseases. For example, it's used for malaria and used also for Lyme disease. Another point that doxycycline is used for acne, but using it for acne, it's considered chronically for a long time. No resistance detected in Treponema palladium. We are talking here about syphilis or chlamydia trachomatis, but it has resistance with gonorrhea. Then our resistance problem is connected to gonorrhea. And then it doesn't need to be adjusted renally or hepatically in patient with impairment if we use the IV form. It can cause esophageal irritation, so it's better to administering doxycycline with plenty of water, and it's better when we are standing, not lying. The final fact is that it chelates cations and other oral bioavailability decreases significantly when administered with calcium, iron, antacids, or multivitamins. So we have two choices: either separate by at least 2 hours or stop the supplement for a while, more than 2 hours, maybe a week if possible, and then reinitiate the administration of these vitamins and calcium and iron. Next. I found another trial called IVPN trial in 2015. This study tested to see if the pill of tenofovir can offer protection against HIV infection if taken on demand or intermittent basis of pre-exposure prophylaxis. I see that this trial is connected to our trial doxybep today to complete what it's not found in this trial. The need for this study is to understand if taking doxycycline medication by mouth as soon as possible after sexual contact without a condom can reduce the risk of sexually transmitted infections, including gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis. And remember that gonorrhea has much resistance here. The second point is to look at the safety of doxycycline post-exposure and the impact of that post-exposure may have on the bacteria that cause sexually transmitted disease, as well as bacteria that normally live on the body. Next. Then study objectives are prevention of sexually transmitted diseases itself and prevention of sexually transmitted diseases complication, as mentioned before, like cervical cancer and infertility and so on. The third objective is assessing the effectiveness of doxycycline post-exposure on the incidence of sexually transmitted diseases and tetracycline resistance among sexually transmitted diseases and commensal bacteria to inform public health policy. Next. This is the affiliation of the study. The sponsor was the University of California, San Francisco, and the authors from University of Washington, National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Mine Pharma International, and San Francisco Department of Public Health. And there is no potential conflict of interest. Okay, the study design of this trial is parallel assignment interventional open label randomized clinical trials about two arms. The first arm is experimental, a group who took doxycycline post-exposure, doxycycline tablet 200 milligrams in addition to standard of care and the testing and treatment. The intervention here is giving 200 milligrams of doxycycline by mouth after condomlessness sexual contact as a post-exposure prophylaxis. That's the first arm. The second arm is the control group. The control arm will consist of standard of care, so sexually transmitted disease, infections, testing, and treatment without any intervention, without giving doxycycline tablets. Next. Okay, eligible participant randomized in 2-to-1 ratio. The two took the doxycycline, and the one without the doxycycline eligible participants randomized in 2-to-1 ratio to receive post-exposure prophylaxis will receive open label doxycycline 200 milligrams to be taken ideally within 24 hours, but no longer than 72 hours after condomlessness sexual contact. The 200 milligrams of doxycycline will be taken at most once per 24 hours period, regardless of the number of sexual acts occurring during this period of time. Sexual activity will be recorded for both arms of the study, doxycycline PEP, and the control group by the participant using a smartphone application that will be adapted for study use. This will enable comparable assessment of risk in the two arms. Next. Okay, about the inclusion criteria. The first one is about willing to able to give written informed consent, and for it's allowed to document in another way mentioned in the study if the application is not working. It means about written consent. The age of the participants needs to be more than 80 years, and gender will be male sex at birth. Previously HIV diagnosed patients are included in this study, and HIV seronegative at the time of last test within the past months will be included also in the same study. Condomlessness sexual contact with more than one equal or more than one male sex at birth partners in the past year will be included also. Finally, diagnosed with gonorrhea or chlamydia or early syphilis will be included if it was diagnosed in the last 12 months. Next. Then the exclusion criteria. We or they exclude the participants who has allergy to tetracycline class, excluded the current medication which may impact doxycycline metabolism or that are contraindicated with doxycycline as per the prescribing information. This includes systemic retinoids or acne, barbiturates, carbamazepine and phenytoin for seizures that were excluded from this trial. Current use of warfarin as an intermittent doxycycline use can lead to an unpredictable impact of INR, so that was excluded. The final exclusion was anticipated use of doxycycline during the upcoming 12 months for non-sexually transmitted disease prevention, like treatment acne. Next. When we come to the trial, we will see that the whole participants are 501 participants, about 327 in the pre-exposure prophylaxis cohort group. And the other group was about 174 in the patient living with HIV. Then a further analysis was in the PrEP group. In the PrEP group, that's a suffix for pre-exposure prophylaxis group, and sexually transmitted infection was diagnosed in 61 out of 570 quarterly visits. It's about 10.7% in the doxycycline. When comparing with the standard care group, it will be 82 out of 275 quarterly visits. And when you are looking to the 2%, when doxycycline, we see 10.7%. Compared to standard care, we will see 31 and 9%. The decrease in the doxycycline taking group proves that the doxycycline is doing well with our trial. On the other hand, in the patient living with HIV cohort, and sexually transmitted infection was diagnosed as in 36 out of 305 quarterly visits, in the percentage of 11.8% in the doxycycline group. Compared to the standard care group, we will see that 39 out of 188 and 128 quarterly visits, and the percentage of 13.5% from standard care. And this is also when we are looking to the percentage of the doxycycline, we will notice that it's lower than the percentage in the standard care group, and that's proof also that the doxycycline is doing well. Next. When it comes to analysis, we will see the endpoint or the primary endpoint about the incidence of equal one or more than one bacterial sexual transmitted disease every quarter, about 270 days. We will see two charts. The first on the left is the doxycycline group. As we see before, the incidence of sexually transmitted disease lowered to 10.7, and the standard group was about 31.9%. That means that there is a relative reduction about 21.2%. On the other hand, for the patient living with HIV, in the right of the chart, we will see that the group that taking doxycycline prophylaxis has a percentage of 11.8% compared with the standard care group, and with the percentage of 13.5%. There is a relative reduction about 18.7%. So when we are looking for two charts, we will notice that there is always a relative reduction, either for a patient with a pre-exposure prophylaxis or a patient living with HIV without the pre-exposure prophylaxis. The doxycycline has lowered the sexually transmitted diseases or infections incidences in the two kind of people, compared with standard care that didn't take the doxycycline. Next. As mentioned before, there is a resistance to gonorrhea. I said that there is no resistance to chlamydia or for syphilis, but there is a great or a big resistance for tetracycline with gonorrhea. As in the chart, 5 out of 13 that the group taking doxycycline have resistance towards tetracycline. And compared to the standard care without doxycycline, the resistance is not mentioned compared to the group with doxycycline. So it's obviously that the doxycycline has a problem with gonorrhea. Next. The next, this slide is mentioning the doxycycline resistance with the Staph aureus. It's obvious that it's extremely small, neglectable resistance for doxycycline with the Staph aureus. And by the way, when looking to serious adverse events towards doxycycline for the patient taking doxycycline in this trial, either the pre-exposure patients or the patients living with HIV, there was little or no little adverse events and no serious adverse events. That's give a safety margin for doxycycline. Next. This is as a conclusion for the previous charts. The patient taking HIV pre-exposure prophylaxis or the patients who are living with HIV when they took the doxycycline after condomless sex within the first 24 hours up to the 72 maximum 72 hours after having this sex, the incidence of bacterial sexually transmitted infection has decreased. Next. These were the patient baseline characteristics. So when we are looking for age, the mean is 38 years old. And gender identity, the men was having the majority of the percentage participated in this trial, the men who have sex with men, and transgender women took only 4% from the total number. The sexually partners in the past 3 months is almost equal in the three categories. In the two categories, either the pre-exposure prophylaxis or the patient with HIV. Next. Then results will be summarized in 3 points: efficacy, safety, and resistance. The efficacy, it's have been obvious that the incidence of the 3 elevated sexually transmitted diseases, chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis, were lower with doxycycline than the standard care, as we mentioned in the first chart. In the pre-exposure prophylaxis cohort, the relative risk were 0.4 with the confidence interval of 95%. That's a good study and show a significant difference for gonorrhea. And for chlamydia, the relative risk was 0.1, 0.12, with a confidence interval also 95% for chlamydia. This is for chlamydia, and 0.13 for syphilis. And in the people living with HIV cohort, the relative risk was 0.4 for and for gonorrhea, and 0.2 for chlamydia, and 0.2 for the syphilis. That was about efficacy. The second point is safety. There were 5 grade 3 adverse events, and no serious adverse events were attributed to doxycycline, to the groups that took doxycycline. That's the second point. The third point about resistance: the participants with gonorrhea culture-based have tetracycline resistant gonorrhea. Occurred in 5 out of 13 of the doxycycline group, and 2 out of 16 in the standard care group. Next. From what's found, incidence of the 3 elevated sexually transmitted disease were really lower than the standard care group with doxycycline, and was no serious adverse events, and grade 2 adverse events were contributed to doxycycline. The doxycycline trial demonstrated significant effectiveness and tolerability against these common sexually transmitted infection in gays and bisexual men and transgender women with HIV or taking HIV pre-exposure prophylaxis. The limitations for this study: the first one is the adherence of the participant to take doxycycline in its time. That was a limitation. Then additional data is needed, such as participant data or on the change of doxycycline resistance in other common bacteria found on the body, inside and on the surface of the body, including staff, to evaluate the potential individual and public health risks of doxycycline. Further review of the data presented are potentially additional analysis will be needed to develop clinical guidance from, for example, from CDC on the effect and the safe and effective use of the strategy for bacterial sexual transmitted disease prevention among gay and bisexual men and transgender women also. It will be critical to provide guidance that will maximize effectiveness for sexual transmitted disease or infection prevention while minimizing both individual and potential public health risks. So I think that this needs help from CDC and others. Effects on bacterial resistance and gut microbiome and sexual behavior are still being assessed till now as important consideration for this sexual transmitted infection prevention strategy. Next. Conclusion: the conclusion of the trial. The combined incidence of gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis, the 3, was lower by 2/3 with doxycycline post-exposure prophylaxis than with standard care without giving doxycycline, a finding that supported use among men who have sex with men with recent bacterial sexually transmitted infection. Next. This is the presenter's own conclusion. I will say that the combined incidence of chlamydia syphilis was lower by 2/3 with doxycycline post-exposure prophylaxis, but regarding gonorrhea, it needs more research and more help from institutions like CDC to take the perfect guidance to deal with the gonorrhea resistance. Next. These were the references for the journal club, post-exposure doxycycline to prevent bacterial sexually transmitted infections, and the pharmacotherapy pathophysiologic approach to understand about tetracyclines, and antibiotic simplified, the chapter of tetracyclines also.
You, Dr. Fahmy, for sharing your valuable time and expertise today. And for sure, as the incidence of the sexual transmitted diseases increasing for more than 2.4, I think, millions by 2021, we are really in a high need to effective way to prevent those sexual transmitted diseases, as well as the increasing the incidence of the resistance, as you mentioned, doctor. Dear respected colleagues, we are now moving to question and answers. If anyone have any questions, please let us answer it with Dr. Fahmy. So let's starting with the first question, Doctor. Well, today we are discussing the bacterial sexual transmitted disease, but Jaimal is asking about using doxycycline with fluconazole for treatment of candidiasis. So what do you think, doctor? Dr. Fahmy? Dr. Fahmy, do you hear me?
Hello, do you hear me?
Yeah, it's clear, doctor. We had the first question, as we already discussed about the bacteria. I know it's all bacterial sexual transmitted diseases, but one of the listeners is asking about the doxycycline with fluconazole treatment of candidiasis.
The using of doxycycline with fluconazole for the candidiasis.
Yeah, I believe that fluconazole is enough, right, doctor?
I think the fluconazole is enough for candidiasis. I don't know why he will add doxycycline, except that he found something saying that with an evidence.
Okay, I think other questions asking about the dose. Is it 200 stat and then 100 OD for 7 days? Or one stat dose is enough, doctor?
The dose of doxycycline will be 200 milligrams per dose every 24 hours.
Okay, so every 24 hours, so two doses, right?
Every 24 hours, that's the ideal frequency. And if there was burdens, we will extend that to maximally 72 hours.
So usually it's 2 doses and we can extend it to 3 doses, right?
Right.
Wouldn't using, one of the attendees asking, wouldn't using the doxycycline for prophylaxis of chlamydia and syphilis can lead to resistance?
Already there is no resistance towards chlamydia and for syphilis. The problem and the big problem is about gonorrhea. So that I mentioned before that we need for the guidance, more guidance from CDC to deal with this resistance from gonorrhea and assisting us or assisting the the clinicians who make studies to find an alternative. So the problem
till now
is
we
the
don't have
gonorrhea
any
only.
resistance, right? Till now we don't have any resistance from
Till
chlamydia
now,
and
no
syphilis,
resistance
but
from chlamydia or syphilis. It's
yeah,
the problem is about the gonorrhea only.
gonorrhea, all gonorrhea, yes. Asking about the condoms, is better to prevent options compared to doxycycline?
The condoms are better than doxycycline.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know.
I think we
Because
don't have any evidence regarding that, but
yeah,
both
there is
will work
no
in.
available data for us. We are in Arab world, and we are talking about a topic that is not frequently happen in our Arab world. So this is not clear for me till now.
But I think both of them will prevent the sexual transmitted diseases. Anyway, we don't have any evidence regarding the comparing which one is more effective, right, doctor?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
sure.
we don't have till now anything that that are showing a superiority of inferiority of one another.
Okay, this is questions that's not that much correlated to our webinar, but what's the difference between vaginosis and vaginitis?
That's very interesting. We can deal with this sexually transmitted infections, the whole syndromes and the diseases in an interesting session other than this, because it's very wide.
Yeah, that's right. Those is for acne treatment, gonorrhea, and I think the gonorrhea already mentioned, right? The dose for doxycycline, but he's asking for the
They are
doxycycline
asking for the dose for acne.
treatment. Yeah, acne treatment, gonorrhea, and vaginosis.
Okay, that's a good question. I don't remember now the dose, but I can recommend that you can the question asker. You can use Lexicom or Gene Brandix and entering the indication, suitable indication. It will give you more than regimen to for acne.
Yeah, I do really believe that doxycycline for acne, it's 100 BOOD, but that's depending the treatment duration. It's a chronic treatment, as you mentioned. Yeah, it's very chronic use. With that, we are finished with the webinar. Thank you so much, Dr. Fehmi, for sharing your valuable time and expertise tonight with us. It was really insightful by all means, and I strongly believe everyone in the audience is looking forward to more profoundly important topics like this one in the future. Please note, thank you so much, Doctor. Please note that the certificate of attendance will be issued to you within 7 days, and the session recording will be uploaded to the website of IVPN library within 2 weeks. And with this, we come to the end of IVPN Journal Club webinar for today. I would like to deeply thank you, each one of you, for your active presence and making this session as interactive and fruitful as possible. Stay tuned for our next 2 upcoming Journal Club webinars in the next month. If you are not yet a part of IVPN Journal Club, you can visit our website www.ivpn/network.com and register to our Journal Club listserv. Thank you for your trust in IVPN passion in advancing your expertise. Having a good evening, rest of the day, and goodbye.